next technical issue. I think we never had so much technical issues before. But our next event is 21st of June. Registrations will be open soon. I don't know when exactly. The 7th of June. Scrutiny and gentlemen. Interesting talks, and hopefully it's my mission to have less technical problems. Someone maybe can help Goldy in the meantime. All right. So our last speaker of today is Goldy. She's doing a postdoc at the Institute of Neuroscience or Neurology. I don't know. I wrote down neuro at the UCL. She's going to talk about how deep breathing can enhance learning. Deep breathing, I asked her what it is. Apparently, it's like. So she asked a lot of people to do a lot of and then analyze the data. She likes to travel. The last travel she did to Venice in April. She's in Belgium since July. And of course, I asked her about her favorite beer. A non-match, unfortunately. It's Greek. But I apologize, she says she is learning to drink beer. And next to that, she's not drinking wine and gin tonic. Alright. Maybe just the mic. Is it working? Can you do that? Yeah, perfect. Go ahead.
So thank you so much for the kind invitation and introduction. Today I'm going to talk about this study that I did a couple of years ago, which actually made me realize how much I love data to study human behavior and the human brain. And then it sort of led me on the path of becoming a neuroscientist. So this is kind of a special study for me. When I was doing my master's in cognitive science,
Yeah?
Is it better?
Yes.
So I was saying that this is kind of a special study. I did this a couple of years ago, which made me realize that I really wanted to be a neuroscientist. When I started my master's, I had to do a thesis, and at that time, within the human behavior, I was more interested in how we make different kinds of skill. So you know that humans have this exceptional ability to make a wide variety of movements, which no other species on this planet can do. And we make these sophisticated movements as a society we really value. We pay a lot of money to these people who can make these complex movements. We go watch them and we are always awed by it. So I was always fascinated by how our brain is enabling us to do a wide variety of movements and what are the things that can influence how we learn and retain these skills. So it may look complex to you and a big category of these movements, but actually they are all under the category of what we call skill learning. And it has two characteristic features. First of all, in all those movements that you saw on the previous slide, it basically reflects an ability to make fast and accurate movements. So when you start to learn any skill, whether it is playing a sport, playing a musical instrument, writing, you are either very fast in the beginning or you are either accurate. But you can't do both. The nervous system is just not capable of doing both fast and accurate movement in the beginning. But somehow as a consequence of learning and as the consequence of your brain being plastic, you are able to make both fast and accurate movement, which basically shows up in the data when we collect data from participants who are trying to make fast and accurate movements. You can see that as an increase in their speed when they practice these movements, and at the same time there is an increase in accuracy, or in other words, decrease in their error. And there's a beautiful graph to just show that. What you see here on the y-axis is the error that people make when they try to learn a new movement for the first time. In the beginning you see a lot of errors, the line is flat before training, pre-training. But when they start to practice the task, any task, the errors drop, which shows that your brain is able to learn the task. And then at the end, if you test people subsequently, you will see that they do not go back to their poor performance that they were in the beginning, but they show a nice change in their performance from the beginning till the end, which is what we call retention of skill. So this is just to show that every time you do the action, you don't have to start from scratch, which is very high error. You can retain what you have learned, and then you are basically better every time. So when you go to play sport in the subsequent sessions, you don't have to learn from scratch. The brain is enabling you to remember what you learned from the previous session. So which brings us to the question, what exactly is happening in the brain, which is first of all helping us form memory of the task, and then how are we retaining all these skills eventually. So I was interested in this question, and I thought maybe this is what I'll study for my master's thesis, and my supervisor had some projects for me already. But then before I started my thesis, I went to do an internship at the hospital, where I found that the doctors were recommending yoga and meditation to a lot of patients. And I was very fascinated because no matter what the psychiatric condition was, everybody had to do yoga and meditation. So I asked the doctors that does this really help, because I'm Indian but I'm still skeptical about yoga and meditation. And they said yes, in some conditions that is more helpful than the medication. So I was really blown up by that. So I go back to my supervisor and I say, I know you have some projects for me, but this is an idea that I really want to test. That can we use a simple intervention, which is just sitting and doing deep breathing, to see some influence on skill retention. And he looked at me and he's like, Goldy, do you want to destroy your career even before starting it? And nobody combines yoga with meditation. I said, no, but this will be a very scientific study, so we will do a rigorous scientific study to understand the effect of these techniques on brain function, which is motor behavior in this case. He was not very happy, so I was obviously very sad. And then he looked at me, and I think my sad face did change something in me. In him, he said, okay, fine, just do this, but you should be ready that if the project is not finished on time, you will have to extend your master's thesis. I said, okay, for the love of science, I'll do it. So we sat down and we decided how we do this, because he obviously had no expertise in this, in the yoga department. Neither did I at that time. So we thought, let's try to be very scientific here, and we want to understand this question. So how should we do this? First of all, I needed some guinea pigs. So these were most of the students who were studying in the university and my department at that time. So I recruited young people who were right-handed. So I wanted to make sure that everybody is right-handed, because it's a motor task. So you want to ensure that people are right-handed. Then we made them learn a task. So I'll quickly show you what the task was. It was actually simply a tracing task, but it captures the essential quality of a skill task, which is to make fast and accurate movement. So on the screen, subjects will see this blue rectangle. They are told to enter the rectangle using a stylus in the computer. Once they do that, they get to see these two rings. They are told to move within the ring, so they have to avoid going outside the ring. Once they do that, they go back to the rectangle. We give them a feedback about their movement. Now the red line that you see here is showing that in this part of the trajectory, they went outside the rings, the path that they were specified to be in. And the red circle that you see here is showing that in the given time that we have given them to finish the movement, they were not able to do that. So the red circle should be in the blue rectangle to indicate that they finished the movement on time. Here, they should not see the red trajectory, because this shows error in their movement. So we combine these two as a score and give them, on every trial, we also give them a feedback about their error. So we give them error value. We tell them that not only you have to reduce seeing the red, you also have to reduce the error. So make sure that this goes down to 0. So this was the task, a very simple task, but essentially capturing the ability to make fast and accurate movements. And then we had two different groups in the beginning. Of course, control groups, so they're learning the task on day 1. We make them rest for 30 minutes after they have learned the task. We test them for retention immediately after learning and the rest. And then day 2 also we test them for testing for long-term memory retention. In our experimental group, they do the same thing. They learn the task. Instead of resting, they're doing this slow, deep breathing. Then we test them on day 1 and also on day 2. So simple design. And let's see what we see. So with the two groups here, I'm showing you the data of the learning session on day 1. So remember, on the y-axis you will see error. A drop in error is what you see on the plot here. So on the x-axis you have number of blocks. So 10 blocks, basically 200 trials. So you see this nice drop in error. These are two different groups of subjects, the control and the reading group. Here you can see that there's no difference in the learning rate, so essentially everybody learned the task. Now critically, when we test them for retention at 30 minutes after the intervention period, we see that the breathing group, so that is the breathing group, they are actually retaining the task, so they are basically performing as good as they were at the end of the learning session, whereas the control group, who was resting here and not doing anything, is forgetting the task. So they go back from their good performance here to somewhat poor performance when we test them at 30 minutes. And the trend is similar when we test them the next day. So even after a gap of 24 hours, the breathing group is retaining the performance almost 100%, whereas the control group is still forgetting the task, even though they were here at the end of day one, second session, and end of day one on the first session. There is still a forgetting. So this was obviously very, very fascinating to me, and my supervisor was also very surprised. This meant that I could finish my master's thesis on time, but I still had this nagging question that is the breathing group performing better because they had this intervention here and they were getting to do the task again. So is there some recency effect? And is that leading to a better performance here? So as scientists, we always doubt everything. So I had this doubt, and I said, no, we need to have one more group who will be like the control group here. So they will not do the breathing here, but they will do breathing here. Then they will go back home. So we let them forget about the task, and then we will see whether they retain the task on the second day or not. So for that, we had the third group, which is learning like everybody else. They are resting like the control group. They are doing the retention test, but then they are doing deep breathing here, like my first group. And then next day I test them for retention. And my prediction is that here their performance should match with the control, if this is really the effect of breathing on memory. And here the performance should match like this group. Okay? And voila, we have yes, actually like that. So here you don't see the difference in the learning rate at all. And on retention test 1, you see this breathing late group is actually performing comparable to the control group. And then when I test them on day 2, interestingly, the error is now overlapping with the breathing first group. So now their retention performance is better here, but comparable to the control group here. So what this tells us is that a simple intervention like deep breathing can actually facilitate retention of newly learned motor behavior. So the two breathing groups are performing better than the control groups, and this obviously shows. Actually, at that time, this was the first study to show effect of a simple breathing practice on a complex brain function, which is a skill memory. So I was just very happy that I could finish my thesis on time. My supervisor was happy for another reason, because we could publish it. So this is open in an open journal, so you can read the paper. You also have access to the data, and if you have more questions, you can always ask me. But since then, which is 2015 is when I did the study, there have been so many studies now that have looked at the effect of these deep breathing practices on stress, insomnia, pain perception, attention, and it has been shown both in kids and adults that this can modulate attention. And then memory, ours being the procedural memory kind of work, and then there are other papers looking at declarative memory and how these interventions can influence memory in general. So a lot of people have now gotten interested in this just because it's such a simple intervention to explore. So with that, I will end the talk. I will just tell you that take a deep breath.